One of DePaul's highest profile programs has a dramatic statement right at the top of its webpage, a statement of apology. Good Day DePaul's Sadie Fisher has details.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
The impact of George Floyd's death and the Black Lives Matter movement is still being felt a year and a half later. DePaul's theater school was one of many institutions at the university to release an anti-racism statement that acknowledged how they're going to address issues surrounding race. The statement is still featured on the homepage of the theater school's website, which was an intentional decision. It says directly, quote, "The theater school is working to dismantle systemic racism in our institution."
That for us, putting it that front and center was one way of ensuring that we would be accountable to it.
But Paz Brownrigg says that they want it to be more than just a statement.
Statement is just a statement. And so for us, the question is, what's measurable in this? What can we actually, how can we focus on action and not just sentiment? And how do we hold ourselves accountable?
She says while they've made some changes, like hiring adjunct faculty of color, reimagining their theater history courses, and reassessing what shows they pick, all with diversity considerations in mind, they're still assessing what the school can do.
We're still, in some ways, in that kind of assessment phase. Like, what is happening at the institution? What's changeable? What isn't? So that process is long if it's going to be truly effective.
The school's diversity advisor, Dexter Zollicoffer, says that conversation is at the core of the school's mission.
Of this whole sort of institution, at least having these sort of difficult conversations or being willing to discuss it, because it's very much out in the open now. And we've always said that that we were not going to hide behind these type of issues. We were going to speak very openly about them. And I think that is happening.
Zollicoffer says these changes are going to take time.
Do we have the answers right now? No. But we're in a position, I think we're in a better position to get closer to some sort of solution.
He's been in this position for 20 years and says his role is constantly shifting.
But whatever is happening nationally, we don't live in a vacuum here at the theater school. We are directly affected by anything that's going on in the news cycle, any of the big movements that are happening.
The school has created a committee that allows students and faculty to discuss current issues and decide what the school can do to help, which includes looking at the language the school uses and seeing if it's appropriate. Zollicoffer also says they've created areas for marginalized groups to come together and have a space to be open and themselves.
We had just started this notion of having like affinity groups. If there were certain groups of students who felt connected either, through race or quite frankly through sexuality or gender or any other way, disability, any other way they felt connected, we wanted to make sure that theater school was a place that had a space that was quote unquote a safe space for them.
But despite these actions, some students of color say that they haven't seen much change.
We need to talk about anti-racism. That's not just our first year, right? Like, how do we continue it within every year and every practice that we do? So there has been nothing on that, or nothing that I've heard. And there's it's also surprising that we talk about all this anti-racism, right? We talk about all this stuff and equity, but I think you see within who gets accepted and who comes to the school, right?
Dominguez Magdaleno is a member of the diversity committee at the school, but says that the committee hasn't been active this school year.
Now that we're back in school, the committee is not existent. It's there, right? It's still, but now it's more on students' responsibilities if they want it to happen. So right now, none of us have said anything. So it's just been there. And that's about it. Literally nothing has been happening.
While he says he hasn't seen much, Magdaleno feels there has been some movement toward change.
I haven't seen nothing. And I know a lot of the things they'll be saying, it's it takes time, right? And this probably is not going to be into effect till when I leave, right? But I guess an immediate, every professor, I'm not even gonna say every, some, maybe a few are doing something. But there's only so much they can do.
Magdaleno says that a lot of the issues come from the overall decisions of the school, like admitting more students of color, a sentiment that other students echo.
Starting to take more strides into anti-racism, especially because of who they've started admitting to the school. So my year of actors is the largest group of Asian Americans that they've admitted in 1 year.
Lay says that in order to do shows about underrepresented groups, they need to have the right students to do them, and she feels they're just not there yet.
Sometimes it's like a show calls for like one Asian student or one it's an all black show, and it's like, well, we only have a finite amount of said student, so it's like we have to precast them. So that's kind of been a bit of an issue. It's a bigger conversation to have that I don't think we've had yet, just because this is kind of a new problem, which is interesting. And I guess that comes with admitting more students of color.
Lay is the president of the Asian American Artist Alliance, a group that was only able to be created a few years ago.
The Asian American Artist Alliance is a pretty new group. We started my freshman year, but didn't really get to kick things off because of COVID. So this year we're trying to like re-kick things off again, especially because there's starting to be or a larger Asian American student body is starting to be more present in the school, which I think even a couple of years ago wasn't that big, not big enough to start a group at least.
Lay thinks a lot of the changes have come from the students themselves.
I think more students are kind of standing up for themselves and like making their voices heard, rather than like the theater school itself like changing a lot officially, if that makes sense.
And despite criticism from the students, both faculty and students have one thing in common: hope for the future.
One of the things we say a lot is like, we want to design the conservatory of the future. And so we have a lot of conversations now. What does that mean? And I think that a lot of our thinking has changed from preparing students for the field as it is to how can we prepare students to be leaders in the fields that they'll shape. And that's a somewhat different mentality.
When you have that anti-racism, our anti-racism statement on the front page, to me, that's like a branding type moment. It tells anyone who opens that website, whoa, these are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about at the theater school. And I think we want you to think that. We want you to know that this is the kind of environment where we're going to openly grapple with these big things called racism or sexism. We can go down the list, but it's all in service. We're a theater school. It's all in service of art in my mind.
I hope that in the future it only gets better and better, in terms of representation and diversity, but also I hope that the theater school continues to have these conversations and continues to try and better themselves in supporting their students.
The theater school has made small strides in being a school and a community for everyone, and they acknowledge that this is only the beginning and that there is more work to be done. For Good Day DePaul, I'm Sadie Fisher.